Yeah, yeah, we're seeing very significant growth in our business, and it's really been mostly organic. To be honest, we haven't had a significant capital infusion that would really serve as a catalyst to catapult us to the next level. But that's something that we see as a very strong motivation for us wanting to go public and for working with Siyata to make that a reality. We think the public markets are really going to allow us to scale this business out much quicker, and also create opportunities for us, not just organically to grow it, but also by way of acquisition, essentially looking at a number of M&A opportunities that we can do once we finalize the merger with Siyata.
All right, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Superstock live stream. Today we have a debut presentation. This is actually a special situation. We have Siyata Mobie is merging with Core Gaming, and today we have the CEO of Core Gaming on our show, and that is Eitan Zaharan. Eitan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Appreciate it.
Eitan, it's great to have you on. So, what's exciting about this opportunity is that, again, Core Gaming is merging with Siyata. Siyata is obviously on NASDAQ. You guys are doing $80 million in revenues, and the Siyata shareholders will end up owning about 10%, possibly more of the combined entity after the deal closes. And what's exciting, what I find compelling about this opportunity is that you're in the $126 billion mobile gaming space, and the comps are absolutely crazy. We got Apple is trading at like 20 times revenues, and in theory, look, even if this deal was trading at 10 times revenues, we're talking about potentially 800 million or more, because we have also Siyata has revenues, but potentially an 800 million valuation. Let's say, and if Siyata shareholders have only 10%, it's an $80 million upside potential. Right now, Siyata's trading at a $6 million valuation. So that's kind of the backdrop. That's the backdrop for investors. Let's get into the details. That's what we want to hear from you. Again, the deal is going to be expected to close in the next, I believe, 60 days.
Yeah, we're targeting, hopefully it's all regulatory driven, as you know, but we're hoping that we can get this over the finish line by the end of Q2.
Excellent. Look, we've had some major wins in the gaming space. We've had stocks like Fans Unite, ESC Entertainment, went up 1,200, 1,400%. So, potentially this could be, our next 10 bagger or more, based on, kind of the background. Everything is set up. So let's get into the details. Tell us about what exactly does Core Gaming do? Because we have a lot of new people watching. If you give us the background.
Yeah, I'll give you some information about the company. So, yeah, you gave a good intro. We're in the mobile gaming industry, about $126 billion industry. We are an international mobile game developer and publisher. So, in contrast to some companies that just develop mobile games and have their own banners and their own brands, we actually are a publisher as well. We have a marketing platform that we leverage. It's proprietary. It's AI and algorithmic driven, which I'll explain about in a bit. And essentially, we utilize that to distribute games, both our own as well as games that we partner with co-developers on. And so, essentially, we're in the business of creating entertaining games for millions of players worldwide. And right now, we operate in over 140 countries, is where our user base is comprised of. Our gaming focus is hybrid casual mobile games. So, these are games that are not overly technical. These are things that people can, download without a big learning curve and just start playing right away. They also typically have a stickiness to them. It's something that people want to constantly play with and utilize, which is important to our business model, being that it's primarily advertising driven. And so we engage with over 40 million players worldwide each month. And we have launched—
How many players?
40 million players.
40 million players. Okay.
That varies as well, but on an average, about 40 million players worldwide. It's also a number that continues to grow. And we've launched over 2,100 games into the market, and we've driven over 780 million downloads across our gaming portfolios and those of our partners that we work with. And so we have a very exciting business. It's very rapidly growing. This is something that we're excited to have Siyata shareholders a part of.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are impressive numbers. I want to kind of drill down to this. So how does Siyata, how does the business model work? Like, how do you make money? You have these, how many like games do you publish? Explain to us how the model works.
Sure, I'll explain to you. So in contrast, again, to some more traditional gaming companies that are really just focused on their brand, developing games, some that come to mind maybe is the Zyngas of the world. We take a different approach. What we do is we have a unique algorithmic driven process whereby we are actually looking to determine where's the next gaming niche going to be. Where's the next kind of hotspot that's untapped that we can go into? And so we look at a number of different variables to make that decision and determination. But once we do, we will then back into that niche and we'll actually develop games or co-develop games and launch them for that particular niche. And so what that does is it gives us an edge. It gives us a first mover advantage, and it helps reduce our cost of acquisition for increasing our user base, and really allows us to monetize these games in the best way possible. And then once we've launched these games, we continue to promote them. We continue to scale them out, and then we will look for additional niches once we've seen that a certain particular niche has become oversaturated. We move on to a new niche. So a bit of a different model, but it helps. It's really a catalyst for the growth of our company, and it also helps reduce a lot of the marketing spend in comparison to having to build actual brands around games.
Okay, so these games. So you're working with multiple independent developers with these games. I get one of the things I think you mentioned is you leverage AI tools to kind of figure out like what is going to be the next hot trend and be able to have a game ready for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we leverage AI tools as it relates to our marketing platform and our development platform. But the process of actually determining a new niche of gaming to go into, or sub niche, I should say, is really more algorithmic driven. So we have unique algorithms that we utilize that help us kind of make those decisions for us. Again, looking at many different factors and metrics. And then we'll make that decision and start launching games around that.
Okay, kind of like what Netflix does, when they produce shows, right? It's kind of you figure out what's working, and then you do the same thing with these games.
Yeah, except with one further distinction here, which is that we're really looking to get that first mover advantage. We don't want to be behind the 8 ball or go into a crowded space where the cost of acquisition is already high. There's too much competition there. So we're really looking to be trendsetters, and our marketing platform enables us to do that.
Okay, so these are not like copycat games, or I should say, they're not. They're basically, so these are basically you figure out what's happening and then you kind of iterate. Okay, this is going to be the next new thing. You're not copying somebody else's game.
Yeah, and it's not really to say we're creating new categories. Sometimes it's nuances in the games. It's the type of games. So I'll give you an example. Like we have we just put out a press release. I think it was last week, that spoke about some of our AI tools that we've developed that are really cutting edge and help us boost content production by 50%. They reduce our production time by over 40%, and they're really enhancing the quality of the games, for the users and making it more engaging. And so if you look at one of the games that we have in the press release as an example, it's something called AI Comic Video Generator, right? And so there's other apps, gaming apps like this, but to actually utilize our AI tools and to allow the user to transform them into real life footage using stylized animated clips, that's something unique. And that's one way in which we leverage our technology to give us an edge.
Okay. So it's interesting that you mentioned this. So on Friday, when this news was announced about the AI comics, the stock traded like 140 million shares. I mean, the stock basically doubled on this news. I think it could be for a couple of reasons. One is, people are finally figuring out. They're realizing that this is a real company, Core Gaming. So this merger is on its way to happening. next 60 days or whatever it is. And now all of a sudden they're realizing, how real this thing is. So now that valuation gap is closing. Again, in theory, if people really understood, again, this is my opinion, I think if investors really understood the opportunity, then core gaming or Siyata would be trading at 10% of 800 million, let's say, right? We're not going to say it's worth 20 times revenues like app, but let's say 10. We'll say half, right? So in theory, Siyata should be trading at an 80 million valuation. Today it's trading at a $6 million valuation, right? So there's like a 12x valuation gap. I think that gap, and it was 3 million on last Thursday. So the valuation gap, I think, is going to close as we get closer to the merger. Again, my opinion, this is not investment advice or anything like that. But let's talk about the AI. So this is, again, the market got excited about the AI aspect. How important or how big is AI going to be for core gaming going forward in kind of your business strategy, new releases, things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first, let me just say also that, obviously, I think the market was reacting to the news that was put out, and the news was really around our AI technology, right? So I think that this is becoming kind of a focal point for investors, and they're looking to see how AI is really differentiating companies in their respective vertical. And I think that really, from a business point of view, the companies that are going to shine and stand out, as the leaders, are going to be the ones that can figure out how to use AI effectively, in their particular space. So, as it relates to AI for core, it's really becoming, no pun intended, but it's becoming the core part of our technology. We made significant investments into developing these cutting edge AI tools, using text and language and video models. And as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of twofold. For us, AI is both in the process of development, so it's helping us increase content production by over 50%, and it's also reducing production time for us. But it's also on the creative side, so it's creating more unique games. It's allowing us to do things that we weren't able to do before, and this is like a suite of tools that we've created that are actually integrating into what would otherwise be a very complex production workflow for our games. So we're utilizing them both ourselves internally at Core, as well as with co-developers, other gaming companies that we work with to launch their games in ours. And I think that ultimately what this boils down to in our sector is creating games that have a stickiness to them, that people really connect to, that they enjoy playing. And so doing that in a way that wows them using, like I said before, the AI comic generator, or another example is a novelty game called Aging Video Generator that allows, life progression from childhood to old age using AI-based transformation. So these are things that normally would have been very low quality before if you tried to do it. And so utilizing this new cutting edge technology, we can really offer consumers and our users a very unique experience that they can really connect to.
Okay, so this is the thing where people make videos of themselves for TikTok. So you do those things, right? For
right. Actually, we've seen a multi-thousand-fold increase once we've launched some of these AI tools in content generation on TikTok utilizing our tools. So that is definitely a good point that you brought up, and it is one very strong example of how people are utilizing our technology.
Okay, so let's talk about, again, the gaming space. Maybe I didn't break it out properly. I think the numbers I'm getting, it's like 126 billion. I don't know if it's for mobile gaming or gaming altogether, but it's a huge market. Again, most people are playing on their phones anyway, so huge market opportunity. Again, this is according to Statista. They came up with this $126 billion number. And how do you differentiate yourself? Like, what are your competitive advantages? You mentioned AI. Like, how do you? You're putting out, how many games a year are you doing? Like, let's get into that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you're right. That's where the industry is pegged at. It's also projected to grow by 2029 to about 157 billion. Today, there's billions of people gaming. The ubiquity of mobile devices has just created a situation where people can utilize this on the go and, for many hours a day. I think the average amount of time spent by people gaming is over 7 hours a week. So we're talking about, a tremendous market that is just going to continue expanding. From our perspective, what we do, and you mentioned there's a few competitors out there, AppLovin being one of them. We kind of fit more into that box rather than pure gaming developers. We're kind of at the cross of gaming developer and mobile gaming publishing and promotional activities. But we really differentiate ourselves in a few ways. I mean, number one, we have a very strong track record of launching and monetizing games. So I mentioned that we've had over 780 million downloads, across the portfolio of our games, and really that doesn't happen by chance. That comes because of the high level of expertise we have in the mobile gaming ecosystem. We also have very strong, extensive relationships with third parties in the mobile gaming industry. As well as with ad platforms. AppLovin is one that you mentioned. APP happens to be a competitor of ours, but we also work with them. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And we also have the ability to expand very rapidly into new markets and offerings. And so one of the ways we do that is through our proprietary BI platform. So kind of like AI, but it's called BI. And it's what I referred to before as our unique algorithms and AI technology. And it really enables us to reach with very high level of efficiency a large number of targets of customers and across very diverse cultures and geographies for the games that we publish. And so to be able to communicate and market to those customers effectively across those different cultures and geographies is very challenging. And it's something that our technology really gives us an edge in being able to do effectively.
So you're a global company. What I find very, very compelling about this situation is, we've mentioned, AppLovin. So APP is a symbol on NASDAQ. Again, they're trading at 20x revenues. I think they're doing 5 billion. They're trading at 120 billion valuation, I believe. If I'm not, it's like 5 billion. What's the difference between what you're doing and what AppLovin is doing? Why isn't Siyata trading at 20x or based on this? What's the difference between the two companies, would you say, for the the layman investor to understand?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we really operate in a very similar space. So like I mentioned, we're both companies are in the gaming industry. AppLovin has a similar business model to ours. They're both a developer. They market, they help app developers monetize, and they publish apps, both their own and others. And really their publishing platform at the cross of a mobile ads company. So we do very similar things. In terms of where they're at, they're a bigger company. They do, I think they generate about $5 billion in revenue. We're a smaller company in that respect, but we're growing very rapidly. Our 23 financials were $57 million in top line revenue, and our 2024 unaudited financials were about 80 million. So we're definitely on the right trajectory, and as we
very
continue,
similar growth rate as App. I think their numbers are very similar. I think it's like whatever 35%, whatever the numbers are. It's very similar. I mean, I haven't looked at the very similar growth rates.
Yeah, we're seeing very significant growth in our business, and it's really been mostly organic. To be honest, we haven't had a significant capital infusion that would really serve as a catalyst to catapult us to the next level. But that's something that we see as a very strong motivation for us wanting to go public and for working with Siyata to make that a reality. We think the public markets are really going to allow us to scale this business out much quicker, and also create opportunities for us, not just organically to grow it, but also by way of acquisition, essentially looking at a number of M&A opportunities that we can do once we finalize the merger with Siyata.
Okay, so you're looking at, so after the deal closes, so you have a potential M&A pipeline in place right now.
Yeah, I have to be careful, of course, as to what we can say, just because the deal hasn't closed yet with Siyata. But I will say that part of our strategy for growing core gaming is acquisition. And so we've always looked at core gaming as not just a pure gaming focused company. We're really looking at us as an AI and tech driven gaming business, and even more of a holding company, I would say, where we're looking to bring assets that are complementary to one another and strategically aligned, and even more so can help each other grow. And so, yeah, we are looking at a number of M&A opportunities that will be in both the similar space, meaning gaming, as well as sectors and industries that are complementary, but that fit within the BI platform so that we can utilize it. One example would be short form content generation, so similar to TikTok. And that we'll be able to leverage our BI platform for that as well.
Okay. What about, like, in terms of potential acquisitions, how are you looking at things which are, AI focused, or do you any AI opportunities that are in this pipeline that you could?
Yeah, I think just by the nature of how things are developing, in the tech industry, everything is really going in that direction. So it's going to be harder and harder to find companies that are not exposed in some form or other to AI. I'll tell you that from our kind of strategic outlook, we develop a lot of the technology in-house, and so the proprietary nature of what we're doing is something we'd like to keep in-house. It's not to say that we're not out there looking for other technologies that we can layer on top of ours. That is something that we do. But what's a much bigger bullet point for our criteria for companies we would consider to do M&A transactions with would really be some sort of unique point of difference, right? So in the respective industry. So just like I mentioned to you that we have a first mover advantage and that gives us an edge, we're really looking for that edge. We're looking for something we could replicate in similar industries that will give us that edge in that space as well. And also something that we're very much keen on looking at in terms of targets is something that's going to really be accretive to our business, right? And so we want to look for companies that have significant top line revenues, have healthy profit margins that will help advance our business and create shareholder value.
Okay, let's talk about the merger. So what was the reasoning? Why did you choose to merge with Siyata? I mean maybe there are other companies. Like what specifically about Siyata attracted you to the deal?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we were in discussions with a number of companies, a number of public issuers that were seeking out strategic alternatives, like Siyata was, and I think it's a few things. First of all, we were looking for a company that overall had a clean cap structure that was not really deficient in any of their NASDAQ qualifications to maintain the listing. That's very important. And also a company that had a strong shareholder base, something that was tech-centric and mobile-centric, and that already had an existing shareholder base that was really looking to be reinvigorated. And that's really, if you speak to Mark Sillenfround, who's the CEO of SYTA, he would tell you the same, which is that their business was and continues to be the mobile business of Siyata continues to be a very strong and fast-growing business. But in terms of the exposure and scale that it would be able to achieve, it's nowhere near what Core can bring, right? And so it's kind of like a good synergy between the two companies, whereby Siyata will continue to operate as a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary of Core. It will continue down its path and continue to grow that mobile business, but Core will really be able to take the reins and scale the company out, and as I mentioned before, in terms of our vision and strategy, and do it with a shareholder base that really believes in this sector, that believes in the potential that exists, and really wants to continue to take part in that journey with us. So I think that was kind of the focus. I don't think it would have made sense, for example, for us to look at merging with a biotech company,
right?
Shareholder base.
No, the synergies. I mean, it makes sense, and also what I like about it is that you mentioned like re-energizing the base. There's a very good shareholder base, at Siyata, and I think the stock has like 10,000 followers on StockTwits. So there's a base. I think and why that's important is I think when investors, after the deal, or as we get closer to the closing, as they see news flow, that's a very, very powerful base. When that gets reinvigorated, that could really move the stock. I mean, we've seen that happen. You've seen that, I'm sure, happen many times before. And again, right now, it's a very attractive stock price. We're trading at what, in the $1.50 range as a NASDAQ stock, and it's super attractive. So what exactly the deal terms? Let's just clarify the terms of the transaction, because I think some people may not be clear on it. How will the deal work?
Yeah, the deal basically, it sets Core Gaming with a $160 million valuation, which again was substantiated by a third-party valuation that Siyata had done, and it will see ultimately a 90-10 split, meaning the Siyata existing legacy shareholders of Siyata, today's shareholders of Siyata, as of the record date, which will be the date that the transaction closes, will be retaining 10% of the post-merger equity of the company. And so being that Core Gaming is valued at 160 million, that means that they will be retaining $16 million of equity of what will be Core Gaming, or SYTA. And so, I think that's also a very strong value proposition for shareholders, because right now, as you mentioned, the stock is trading below that. And so a dividend will be issued, essentially giving them additional shares to top them up to that 10%, or $16 million.
Okay. But at the minimum, they're going to have 10% of the...
At the minimum, exactly. So for example, if, the stock were at the time of closing appreciate to 32 million, then, their ownership structure will be double that, right? It'll be, 20%.
Okay. So, no, I mean, look, it's very compelling, again, because, post-closing, this thing should be valued. I mean, if you're doing 80 million in revenues, you got the growth rate very similar to App, it should be valued. Maybe not 20x, but even at 10x, even at half of that, which, many fast-growing tech companies are valued at 10x revenues, right? That's pretty common these days, especially, the market's relatively healthy right now. So at 10x revenues, again, 800 million. We're not even counting the Siyata legacy revenues, which I think are like 10 million, right? They're like somewhere around 10, roughly 10. So, we're talking about 800 million valuation. 10% of that is 80 million. Stock today is trading at, $5-6 million valuation. So $5-6 million valuation, it should be worth 80, based on the comps, so there's that, that arbitrage opportunity, that valuation gap opportunity. So I guess, people can do the math at what the upside is, between 5 million and, so it's like a 12x, I believe. Okay, so there's going to be a lot to unpack in the next couple of weeks, and I think maybe next time you come back, maybe we'll see some demos. We'll look at some of the products, things that you guys are doing at Core Gaming, but it's very exciting. So I want to, Eitan, I want to kind of close out. I know we're a little bit pressed for time today. I want to close out with saying, look, what's your vision for this company? Once the deal closes, let's say 3 years from now, what could Core Gaming look like potentially?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate you having me. I think this was great, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and being able to communicate to both our current shareholders and prospective shareholders, and helping them learn about the core business. I think, to answer your question, we have a visionary team at Core Gaming. We don't just have brilliant minds. I mean, we have ex-Tencent employees, really people who are of the highest technical caliber. But more important than anything is we're visionaries. And so, we're never content with where we are. We're always looking to the future. And, I think the fact that technology is moving at such a rapid, dizzying pace, we feel compelled to always stay ahead of the curve. And so it's pushing us, it's motivating us to iterate and innovate. And that's being reflected in our business. So, I envision Core Gaming continuing to grow its main business, its gaming business, continuing to develop new technologies, and scale out the current business that we have, both organically and by way of acquisition, and also to explore, as a holding company, also to explore other complementary businesses that will give us a exponential growth curve to our company. I'm not prepared to start forecasting what our revenues may look like, the next 2 to 3 years. But I will say that, we're definitely trending in a rapid growth direction just with our current business, and some of the acquisition opportunities we're looking at. I believe we'll scale it out very significantly, for us to be able to drive shareholder value.
Okay, exponential growth. I mean, that's exactly what our audience is looking for. Eitan, I want to thank you, and we look forward to hearing more from you and Siyata Core in the coming weeks.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you again.